Welcome, everybody, to this wonderful NOCD webinar. We are talking today about taboo OCD and all of the many ways that it can come up and things of that nature. I'm Tracie Ibrahim. For those of us who have not met, I am a therapist at NOCD. I am an OCD um, and related disorder specialist. I have been treating OCD for 20 plus years. I am also a certified sex therapist, which sounds taboo in itself, but really it's just another kind of therapy. And we will talk a little bit about all of those things. Um, that being said, like I said, I'm a therapist at NOCD. I'm also the chief compliance officer of NOCD, and I run our absolutely fabulous community support group program, which is offered to people who are active members in therapy with NOCD. All right. So, I want to talk about a handful of different things that are going on. I would like to share, I always like to share that I have lived experience with OCD. I have had OCD since as long as I can remember. Obviously, none of us remember, well, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes you remember the day it started, like maybe if it hit you during your formative years when you had more memory, but I can remember being 4 years old and thinking back in time, the sort of counting rituals and magical thinking that I had, not stepping on cracks, things like that. So I clearly had that when I was 4. I don't know if it started earlier. And It's important to note that even kids with OCD can be treated if they are assessed um, appropriately and sent to a treatment specialist. So that is one of the things that I also specialize in treating children. Um, we often treat children, which is wonderful because then you get to interrupt the process pretty early to when it's getting started, as opposed to the rest of us where it takes decades of inappropriate or wrong assessment and care, and we suffer a lot longer. So there's that. Um, so we're going to start by talking about some things, and then we will move to a question and answer section. Your questions do need to go into the Q&A as opposed to the chat. The Q&A is at the bottom of your Zoom. It says Q&A, has a little bubble and a question mark. If you go there and put your questions, you can do that now. You can do that later, and we'll get to as many as we can at some point. One thing is that I notice and hear all the time is that people with taboo themes of OCD feel the most misunderstood and oftentimes very ashamed and very embarrassed, afraid to talk about their themes. They don't know if this is OCD or is it real? Am I a bad person? Things of that nature. And it's really, really important for me to share real information and truths about taboo themes of OCD so that people do not have to go through those awful feelings. Um, because I get that as somebody I have more taboo themes than I do not taboo themes. I also like to sort of level the playing ground here for a minute and say nobody's OCD is better than somebody else's or worse than somebody else's necessarily. Maybe you're suffering more than someone else because your disorder is more out of control, but having a taboo theme doesn't make you you're more intense. You have a harder case to treat. Um, you're actually dangerous. I think it's important to know that those are facts. But where the differences, I think, is in talking about it, sharing about it, because when you are talking about the more non-taboo themes, people aren't going to necessarily have the same sort of reaction, right? If I tell you, that I check the front door over and over, nobody's going to be like, whoa, are you even safe? Right? Or but I also want to say that, and I don't check, but checking is a miserable, miserable format of OCD, a miserable theme. And people are miserable who have it. They feel anxious, they feel crushed by the fear that something bad's going to happen. If they don't, they're irresponsible, maybe that their family will become harmed because they didn't lock the door. So I just always want to point out that anxiety is anxiety, fear is fear. And it's not that one is worse than the other, but with taboo themes, we have the added layer of maybe it's something that's illegal or uncomfortable, or even immoral, if you will. So that's really the main difference. I personally have contamination OCD, and I also have suicidal OCD theme. It's my ride or die since age 10. I have homicidal or harm OCD, that I've had since I was at least about 12 years old. I get sexually intrusive thoughts, that just, they don't really fall under a theme. They just are intrusive and sexual in nature. Um, and I also think it's important to note this. I just have OCD. I don't have 5 kinds of OCD or 4 kinds of OCD. OCD is just OCD in terms of a diagnosis. So when you get assessed and diagnosed, we don't say like, oh my gosh, you have the worst one. You have the hardest to treat one, or you have a different one than the person I saw an hour ago. You all have OCD. If you look at the diagnostic criteria, you either do or don't have OCD. You don't have a theme. Themes describe how OCD is showing up for a person. That's it. Think of it like a flavor, right? Like maybe there are 50 flavors and they're all bad. They all are disgusting flavors of whatever, ice cream, jelly beans, OCD. But at the end of the day, it's just OCD, just like it's just a jelly bean that tastes yucky. So I like to start with that first. I also like to tease apart what people consider taboo OCD versus not taboo OCD. There are things that feel taboo to some people that don't feel taboo to other people. So never try to really fit yourself into a perfect exact box, because again, it doesn't matter. We're going to treat it with evidence-based treatment. We're going to do exposure response prevention therapy no matter what your theme is. I have done exposure response prevention therapy with my own OCD, on all of my themes. They were all treated the same. They just twisted a little bit as to what is it about? Is it about germs in a bathroom? Is it about thoughts that I'm going to harm my child? Is it about I'm going to jump out of a window and die? Um, we're going to work with that in the same way. So I just wanted to sort of throw that out there because a lot of people really get freaked out. Ah, mine's way worse. It's going to be miserable to treat. I don't know if it's treatable. Let's just start with that. Then let's move into some more facts, which is this. One, we don't create our own content. That's why we don't have to feel bad about it. There's no such thing as pleasant OCD content. My contamination OCD comes up more often, I would say, than the other 2 themes, and all of them come up every day, by the way. But it's because every time I walk into a bathroom or sit on a chair or be somewhere where there's, I don't know, somebody's butt or feet where the floor, I just encounter these surfaces and situations more often. So that one gets sort of poked at more often. But it doesn't mean that I don't have the other themes rolling around. I'll look outside and be like, you're just going to run in front of a truck or something. And okay, right. It's possible. And so very important to me to let people know we're not responsible for our content. I don't decide that I'm going to start feeling scared of certain germs. I don't decide that I'm going to have harm thoughts about harming my animals, things of that nature. They just come to me because I have OCD. And when we have OCD, we get intrusive thoughts, we get intrusive images. Sometimes we get intrusive urges or feelings, which some people don't talk about, really feels like something's happening in our body. We will talk about groinal response, which is another reaction that can happen in our bodies when we have OCD, and we'll go into that a little bit. But we aren't choosing to have those things. OCD attacks things you care about. That's that alone is probably one of the most helpful pieces of information that I was given when going through my own OCD treatment process. If you didn't care about it, OCD wouldn't be bothering you about it. If it was like, listen, you're gonna, I don't know, you're gonna yell something inappropriate out at your neighbor who's a super jerk and you're tired of whatever, their dog pooping on your lawn, and you're gonna scream, you better stop letting your dog poop on my lawn. That probably wouldn't freak you out very much because you kind of feel like doing that. It kind of makes sense because you're tired of that happening, and you really don't like your neighbor. That's not how OCD shows up. It shows up and says you're going to do things that go against your values to people that you care about. It could be yourself, it could be other people. So my OCD, I used to work at a job where just my boss was like a super jerk, just super, super, worst boss ever. Um, and I never got intrusive OCD thoughts like you're gonna kill her or you're going to do anything. Um, that wasn't really happening. I didn't really care that much about her. Not that I wanted to kill her, but it just didn't really, it was really focused in on my kid who lives at my house, focused in on my partner who lives at my house, focused in on my kitten who I love, because that's what kind of jerk OCD is. Also, OCD only ever comes up with worst case scenarios. It never comes up with positive scenario options, right? It's not like, don't worry, everything's going to be great. You should just live your best life and move forward, and I'm sure everything will work out well. It never says that. It takes something that might have some possibility. Maybe it's less than 1% possible, but it tells you it's 100% probable. This is going to happen. And that happens across themes. If you don't check the door lock, your whole family's going to just be murdered and all your stuff's going to be stolen, and the worst case scenario, as opposed to maybe you didn't lock your door, maybe nothing will happen. Maybe nothing's going to happen. OCD wouldn't say that. Just like it's not going to say, hey, I know that you're getting these thoughts about harming, or pedophilia or whatever it is that your intrusive, thoughts are going around. Yeah, but don't worry about it. You're definitely a person that wouldn't do that. That's not OCD. It's like, you're definitely going to do this. You should be afraid. How do you know you're not going to do this? How do you know? And shouldn't you find out soon? Because if you don't find this out, your family's in danger, or you're in danger. You need to go to a hospital and lock yourself up. You need to call the police on yourself. Um, and so it's just really important to understand, sort of what even is OCD, why is this happening, and to understand really how and why we can sort of take the taboo themes out of the shadows and out of being so heavy, um, and realizing A, why they feel so heavy, and B, really realizing what is OCD anyway. And the simplest explanation, to start with, first of all, um, nobody knows 100% everything about OCD. Why is it happening? What is happening? But we have a lot of information that is helping us lean toward some ideas and some facts. So We do know that OCD is essentially a broken alarm that goes off in your head. It's the same alarm that goes off when real things that are scary or dangerous are happening. For example, um, if you are in a building and the fire alarm goes off, just because the fire alarm goes off, you don't know for sure is there a danger or not. Did somebody just pull it as a prank? Is this a fire alarm drill? Is there a real fire? Well, you need more information in order to decide, but just the fact the alarm is going off and you hear it might add some anxiety and some feelings of, oh gosh, I have to figure this out. I need to react. I need to figure out if I need to react. And so when our alarm goes off, it's the same alarm whether there's a real emergency or there's not a real emergency when it's OCD versus not OCD. It's the same alarm. And our brain cannot tell the difference. That's the worst part is our brain cannot know the difference. Why? I don't know, but our brain doesn't know the difference because it's the same system that's being alerted. Hey, you need to act. So, um, if right now I heard somebody screaming in the next room, I would have that emergency alarm go off, which is an alarm that's built into your system to protect you and get you to act quickly to get to safety. So I would then have released some chemicals, some adrenaline, some hormones that would then make me get up really fast and run over there and find out why they're screaming. Do I need to, help somebody survive? Are we escaping danger? Do I pick everyone up and run out of the house? Like, what do we need to do here? What is happening? And I have all these chemicals and hormones and things going on in my body telling me, react, react, do something. It's urgent. Now imagine I'm somebody with OCD, like I am. And I'm just sitting here and I'm just talking to you and I'm not doing anything in particular. That same alarm goes off in people with OCD and then releases those same chemicals and hormones and things that make you feel like this is real, this is serious, I'm anxious, and I need to react and it feels urgent. That same thing happens, but there's nothing actually wrong. There's nothing wrong. And because there's nothing wrong, there's nothing for us to do about it. But when you have untreated OCD, you don't know that. So when I was a kid and it was like, listen, you step on a crack, your mom's back is going to break and she's going to die. I took that seriously, that feeling and those thoughts. And I was not stepping on cracks. And if I did step on a crack by accident, you can believe that I am in panic, needing to find out if my mom died. It sounds ridiculous to somebody without OCD, but it felt real to me at the time because that was the alarm that went off. Um, so different, just to be aware that this is what's going on. And the hardest part for people when they're trying to do their OCD treatment is to learn how to live with the discomfort of those feelings that happen that make us want to react and solve. You have to find out for sure. You need to know if you're going to harm somebody. You need to know if you're going to harm yourself. You need to know if you're a pedophile or not. You need to know if you accidentally put something on your computer without realizing it. Did you accidentally post something you didn't mean to? Are you going to blurt something out that you don't want to? Are you going to suddenly do something harmful because you're holding a sharp object, for instance? And because it feels so real, we get scared, we try to react, we try to solve, we try to escape the discomfort of the anxiety and fear that is caused. And what we end up doing, those are compulsions. We also call compulsions safety behaviors because we believe we are doing something to keep ourselves safe. So that is something that is really, really important to know. And with OCD treatment, we are not trying to figure out how to solve this forever. OCD is treatable. It's not curable, but it's treatable. And when you get it treated properly, it becomes manageable. And when it's manageable, it's no longer controlling your life. It's no longer making you have those reactions you used to have. It's no longer making you suffer the way you used to. And I'll give you some examples. Um, when I was growing up and I had suicidal OCD that was untreated, I felt very unsafe around things that I thought that I might use to end my life. And I thought I was dangerous and that I couldn't control myself. So I would get very nervous if there were medications around. What if I just take all of those medications? Or what if I just climb a building and jump? What if all of these different things, what if I run in front of a truck and I can't stop myself? With my harm OCD, it's, what if my daughter's walking down the stairs and I'm behind her and I shove her? What if she's sleeping and I do something? A common one for me, I have a little cute cat and we always sleep together and she cuddles with me and she always puts her little head like this and puts her little neck exposed. And of course, OCD is like, you are going to snap her neck. So you should probably do something about that. Now, in the past, when I would get intrusive thoughts about animals before I was treated, I would I would protect, I thought, the animals by staying away from them. They did not sleep in my room years and years ago when this was going on. I never would have slept with an animal that I was afraid that I might lose control and harm it or end its life. Now, with treated OCD, I can cuddle with my cat. I can get those intrusive thoughts. I can get those intrusive images. I can get intrusive urges, but know that I'm going to be able to cuddle my cat and it's going to be okay. And a level of anxiety and distress I get is much, much lower and manageable compared to when I believed what was happening and let it control my life and start doing compulsions like avoidance is a compulsion. So avoiding them, um, not letting them be in my room, things of that nature. So, um, just something to know because people are always trying, like, how do I make this stop? And it's really important. Remember this, everybody has a different um, genetic makeup. You are from different families, you have different genetics. Genetics make way more difference than you would imagine. So I often see people saying, well, what do you take that helped you? What is the medication you're on? What is the therapy you did? I want to get, what this person has. Let me see what they did and try that. And I just want everyone to remember that we're all different. And you're not going to get the answer online in terms of searching or asking somebody what worked for them, because what worked for them might not work for you and your genetics. What I can tell you is that there are evidence-based treatments that do work if you get somebody to do them with you properly and if you follow through with your part, which is carrying these out in between treatment sessions. So, exposure response prevention therapy, or ERP, is the gold standard treatment, and it has been for several decades now. There is not another treatment that has equal um, efficacy or ability to have the same results as of right now, and hasn't so far. I myself am somebody who am very positive toward people trying medications. You have to go with a medication provider who knows what they're doing. Um, OCD medications are very different than other medications and have to be prescribed in a certain way. And sometimes you have to try several different ones. But what I will tell you is, if you're looking for something like that, the International OCD Foundation has a whole section, or the IOCDF has a whole section of medications, both for pediatrics and also for adults, some of the evidence-based medications and the doses that they have found to be evidence-based for helping with OCD. But even that, remember this, there are people who do those things and they don't find them helpful. Um, I'm somebody who's medication resistant. So I tried all the medications and the right doses and different combinations, and nothing happened for me. And I know a ton of people who it helped reduce their symptoms and made it a lot easier for them. It is important to note, though, that even with medications don't solve OCD, they don't get rid of OCD. And it's still important to incorporate reducing compulsions, which is part of what we do in ERP therapy, because that's really what you're needing to learn. We learn to behave our way back into control over our OCD. So even people who are on medications who are getting help, research shows that medications plus exposure response prevention therapy together would be the most helpful. Um, Research has also shown that, let's just say you could only do one or the other, medications or therapy. ERP therapy is more effective than just medications alone in many of the studies. And so that's also something to sort of show you how important treatment is. And the most important part of treatment is reducing and eliminating compulsions. All right. So for me, people are like, well, how did you get better if you didn't have medications? And the answer to that is exposure response prevention therapy. I I received it about 20 years ago, and I don't use anything else, actually, um, to stay well. And what does wellness look like? It looks different for different people. Some people will experience periods of time where they don't have intrusive thoughts, urges, images, feelings. Um, and I don't know what that's like because I don't get that sort of break. People will say, how do you get that break? I'll say, again, genetics, how the disorder shows up for people is very individual. So when I hear people get days or weeks or hours where they're not really experiencing intrusions, I'm always like, wow, that sounds amazing. I'm somebody who has, again, there's no better or worse OCD, just I'm going to call it consistently there OCD. So it's in the background most of the time. I'm either, something's passing by and it's OCD related. I don't think I've gone an hour, I don't think I've gone a full hour without some sort of OCD intrusion. I could have, but I don't remember. Um, and that doesn't mean that I have a worse life than other people, because I've learned how to manage it. And I manage it by sitting with the uncertainties of life that we have no control over, using my ERP skills. And what people can accomplish much of the time, which is what I've accomplished through treatment and through really the most important thing, which is stopping those compulsions, at least most of the time. Um, when you're not compulsing, you're starving the OCD and it quiets down. It quiets down and it becomes less distressing. And a lot of people are able to reach what we call subclinical symptoms, which is what I have, meaning they don't impair my life, they don't cause me distress, they don't interrupt my ability to function, I don't do the compulsions. Um, like I said, nobody never compulses this again. We all accidentally fall into rumination sometimes or do something. What's important is that the vast majority of the time that we are compulsion free, which keeps everything, like I said, quieter, feels more manageable, um, and helps us be able to move forward. Talking a little bit about taboo OCD and sort of what falls under that, it's kind of different for everybody. I like to talk a lot about the many different ways that it can come up. And I can't give you an exhaustive list because, sometimes people will be like, I never heard anyone talk about this. Does that mean that it's not OCD? The answer is no. OCD is a set of symptoms and behaviors, which are compulsions or mental acts that are compulsions, trying to neutralize those symptoms. So, a lot of people get scared and they think, gosh, um, I'm going to go to therapy. It's going to be really scary. I'm going to have to talk about these things. Isn't that bad for me? Um, isn't thinking about something more of a problem? Shouldn't I be trying to not think about these things or focus on them? And the answer is it's opposite of what you think. So trying to escape them is what tends to keep you stuck in them. So as I go throughout my day, I used to do exposures on all of the things. Doesn't matter if, I haven't had pedophilic OCD, but if I did, absolutely, that would be something that I would be addressing just the same as my suicidal or homicidal OCD or my contamination OCD. We're not trying to get rid of thoughts. We're trying to learn how to live side by side with them, and images and feelings and urges and all those things. None of those are worse or better than another symptom. Um, so just some things to think about. Um, and so people will be like, you want me to think about, whatever, you want me to think about doing something that's terrible? Well, you're already thinking about that. You're already having intrusive images about that. You're already having intrusive, um, all of the things about that. I'm just here to say those are happening to you because you have OCD. How can you manage through them? And one of the ways that we do that is teaching our brains that those things, thoughts are just thoughts, feelings are just feelings, feelings are not facts, images are just images. None of that equals 100% these things are real or certain, or we need to escape them. Even people without OCD get intrusive everything. They just don't make a big deal about it like we do because it doesn't feel real and they don't get stuck in the intensive trying to solve it. So, a good example is when I used to live in Los Angeles and I was constantly driving in traffic, I used to think about like, oh, I had rockets. I would just blow up every car in front of me for miles on the freeway so I can get home quicker. And I would get intrusive thoughts and feelings and intrusive doubt. Why would you be thinking that? There could be babies in those cars. You want to kill babies and moms? What a terrible person. Who wants to just, you don't know who's in there. Also, what if it was someone related to you? What, you're okay killing other people? But, and it goes on and it goes in circles. That would be how somebody with OCD talks about it. But I've shared that intrusion with people who don't have OCD. They're like, oh, I've thought about that. I've thought about, yeah, wouldn't it be nice to just like, get rid of everyone on the freeway so I could get where I'm going. And I'm like, and then what? And they're like, yeah, that's it. Oh, oh, it just stops there? Oh, okay. So that's what it looks like to have intrusive things happen when you don't have OCD. You don't get caught up in it. They don't stick, but everybody has them. And we don't have to be afraid of them. They're not dangerous. So I use a lot of humor, both with my clients and with myself, because it feels heavy and dangerous and serious. Like, this is serious. I'm talking about pedophilia here. Pedophilia is a serious topic. Well, that's true. It is. Pedophilia is. Pedophilic OCD, not so much. Why? Because people who are pedophiles are committing acts or they're anyway, we won't go too deep into that, but it's different than people who are afraid that they might be, trying to figure out if they might be, trying to figure out if, gosh, I had a feeling in my genitals when I looked at a picture. What does that mean? Gosh, I was having intimate relations with somebody or having sex, and in the middle of it I got intrusive images or thoughts or feelings, or and and it was about something really taboo, a kid, whatever it is, and doesn't that mean I like it? And the answer is no, it doesn't. It means you have OCD. OCD doesn't pause itself for things that you're doing in life. You know, maybe it's your wedding day. OCD isn't going to go on hold on your wedding day. It's not going to go on hold when you're, you know, when you're having the best day of your life or the worst day of your life. Same with sleep. You go to sleep. People are like, "Yeah, but I dream about it." And I'm like, "Welcome to OCD still exists when you sleep. It will enter your sleep sometimes." It's not a big deal. I'm here to tell you it's not a big deal. People are like, but mine's a big deal. But I'm trying to figure this out. Um, People will do compulsions that they don't even realize are compulsions. Things like checking to see how I feel, checking to see, did I like that? Did I not like that? Looking things online, um, all of the things. If if it feels intrusive and questionable and you're trying to figure it out, the answer is to stop. And that's something that we learn in exposure response prevention therapy. I'm going to answer some questions, and and then we'll sort of carry on from there. Please make sure you do put your questions in the Q&A as opposed to the chat, because I'm only going to be checking the Q&A for questions. It's just a different, instead of where it says chat, it says Q&A. It has a question mark. And I think I was going to tell you some different ways that OCD can show up. It's not all the ways, but things that, suicidalness, homicidalness, pedophilia, cannibalism. It can show up in, am I going to do something very scrupulous? It could be religiously related. It could be in the form of intrusive thoughts, feelings, images, urges, groinal response, or feelings in your genitals. The feelings in your genitals that are called groinal response. Um, they it can happen, and when it happens, it's not related to what's actually going on with the content. And OCD tells you it was. So you're like, gosh, I got an erection or a tingle in my genitals when I saw this, thought of this, whatever it was. Oh no, that's proof, that's proof that I like it or that I am a bad person or something like that. And it's actually the opposite. It's not proof of that. We could go deeply into that, but it's something called arousal non-concordance, which basically means the reaction in your body is not jiving with the reaction in or what's happening in your brain. And it goes both ways. So it can be, I'm having feelings in my genitals and my brain is like, no, no, I don't like that thing. Or it could be, I really want to be intimate right now with somebody, but my body in my head, but my body's not cooperating. So it goes both ways. All right, let's start answering some questions here. Where do intrusive thoughts come from? That is a great question. They just happen. We don't have a super perfect answer to where they come from. They come out of your brain, obviously, in a similar part of where other thoughts come from, but I've heard them described as kind of like a synthetic thought. It's not the usual type of thought. It's a thought that comes out that goes against your values as opposed to for your with your values. Um, but the important part is that even though they're coming from your brain, doesn't mean you're responsible or that you created it or that you like it. So very important. I love my kids. I love my I love my family. I love my cat. And none of that means just because I get those that there's something that I'm creating these thoughts about harming them means anything. It just means that I have OCD. It's not a big deal. And I know that now because I've had treatment. So when I get them, I'm just like, I roll, don't care, that's annoying. Or whatever. Do you use or say an ERP message? Oh, sorry, hold on, I missed one. Is it safe and secure to share your intrusive thoughts with your NOCD therapist? The answer is yes. We very thoroughly train all of our therapists. They are very aware of the different ways OCD shows up, and it is absolutely a safe place to share. I have certainly had many, many people come in and say, "Oh, I'm afraid you're going to report me to the police or to Child Protective Services. I'm scared of telling you what's going on." And I'll usually just sort of lay out, well, is this about harming yourself, harming somebody else, harming children, harming pets? Is it about eating people? What could this possibly be about? I wonder. Is it about hit and run? You think you ran somebody over, but you're not sure? You're gonna yell things out or violate people, or maybe it's racism, OCD, or I'm going to say or do things that other people will perceive as bad. I'm gonna lose control of my body. I'm going to check out of my brain and like freak out, black out and do things that are dangerous. It doesn't really matter what it is. We have heard it. We also have, as I mentioned earlier, some community support groups. When you are active in therapy with us at NOCD, I happen to surprise run two of our OCD support groups that the two that deal with taboo themes. I have one on Tuesdays called Sexual and Harm Content OCD. And then also I have one on Sundays called Managing OCD with Taboo Themes. We talk about them, we laugh, we find ways to implement humor because it feels so serious, and these are not serious. They just feel serious. So we learn about that. Do you use or say an ERP message every time you get an intrusive thought? That is a great question. The answer is no, because that is exhausting. Um, we really want to deal in non-engagement responses, which is not engaging. Initially, when you're early on in treatment, we do look at things like helping you learn how to respond in a way that's not compulsive. So we might have you respond in ways that help you sit in uncertainty. I'll give you some examples. Um, when I used to get like if I were in the sort of more in the beginning of my treatment, and my treatment, let's say I was laying with my cat and it was like, you're going to break your cat's neck. Earlier in my treatment, I would have used response prevention messages as I laid there and didn't compulse. And in order to not compulse, like avoid, move the cat, kick the cat out of the room, freak out, try and figure out why I'm having those thoughts, those would have all been compulsive. Instead of that, I would use response prevention messages or non-engagement responses. So I would say something like, anything's possible. I guess we'll find out. Sure, I guess. Sure, it's possible I'm gonna snap her neck, but seems to me like for now I'm just gonna lay here and try to fall asleep. So those would be some examples of things. Now, I, I'm somebody that gets intrusive thoughts just almost like just a lot anyway. If I spent the whole day responding, I would have nothing else to do in my day. So as I gained control over understanding how not to compulse and how to use responses like response prevention messages and non-engagement responses that help me sit with uncertainty without compulsing, I didn't have to do that anymore. So now I lay with the cat, I get those thoughts, and I do nothing. I just leave it there. I pet my kitty, I scratch her neck, which is one of her favorite things to do. And I just sit with the images, the urges. The thoughts are like, oh, you're going to snap her neck. Oh, now your hand's on her neck. Oh, her neck is so tiny and easily breakable. I might see an image of breaking her neck. I might all the like feel the feeling like it's gonna happen, and I just keep petting her because she likes it, I like it, and she's cute to fall asleep next to. So if that helps, in the beginning you might want to do it to help you not compulse, but certainly nobody wants to have to answer to it all day. Why, when I love my boyfriend more than all the world, do I have feelings of enjoying someone at work flirting with me? It makes me feel like I'm wrong and I'm bad, and I don't know if that's my OCD. It could be. I mean, I can't assess you, but that could be a normal feeling, but it could also be some relationship OCD. Some people feel guilt feelings when people are flirting with them. And that's just that situation. Other people with relationship OCD might overly focus on that and go, am I a bad person? What does this mean? Do I need to let them know about this? Does this mean that I'm not attracted to my boyfriend? I know those types of things sound a little bit more like OCD. But again, it's somebody's flirting with you at work, and that falls within, what you would normally do, and that's not a problem in your relationship. And I don't know why it would be a problem. Maybe it's, you know, maybe you and your boyfriend are like, you know what, we don't allow in our relationship? What? Flirting with other people personally. Okay, so then maybe you just have to say, well, I can't control other people's behaviors. If people flirt with me, I can't control their behaviors, but maybe I don't want to engage in it. I don't have to flirt back, for instance. Um, all right. Part of my reassurance measures involve gathering or seeking out evidence to prove my thought wrong and reassure me that my fear is not true. This could be replaying past experiences in my mind or comparing myself to other people to reassure myself that my fear is not true, even though I know on the logical level it's stupid and my fear is not rooted in reality. Is this common? It is so common. I'm going to break it in pieces and tell you what each of those compulsions are called, right? So, again, as you said, reassurance measures, gathering or seeking evidence to prove my thought wrong. Well, again, you can come up with all the evidence in the world. And OCD has intrusive doubt as the main core problem of it. And it's going to come and steal that from you. Oh, but you didn't look in all the places. Oh, but maybe you didn't look it up right. Maybe you didn't ask the people in the right way. Maybe they don't know about this special situation. So it's a waste of time trying to solve it and create evidence because OCD will never be satisfied. And the more you do that, the louder your OCD gets and the more doubtful and untrusting of yourself that you get. Replaying your past experiences in your mind, or comparing yourself to other people. That is mental reviewing, another compulsion. And again, comparing is a mental compulsion. And again, looks like you're trying to prove that your fear is not true. And so also, something to note, I like to tell people this, the more you try to replay past experiences and try to solve for the past, false memory OCD is often created that way. So we can have real event OCD, we can have false memory OCD just from trying to figure something out. Our brains are very logical. So the more you go back and try to, wait, what about this? And what about this? Your brain will start filling in the blanks with dark, yucky stuff that's not real. And so that's one of the reasons why I like to leave it alone. I don't know who made up this saying, but I love this saying. I learned, I don't know, a million years ago. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery. Uh, so stop trying to figure it out, is what I'm saying. Um, if you don't have an exact recording moment by moment of your thoughts and every physical action you have taken in the past or might take in the future, you need to live in right now in this moment. Because like I said, even if you solve it, and I'll give you a good example of this. I've had suicidal OCD since I was 10, and now I'm 51. Doesn't that seem ridiculous that for 41 years it's been telling me that I'm going to do something that I haven't done? I don't need to solve whether or not it's going to happen or not. Does that mean it's impossible for me to end my life? No, it's always possible. That's true. It's always possible. It's just, it hasn't happened and I don't need to figure it out. So I don't bother to try. Oh no, but what about today? You're having depression. Doesn't it make it more likely? No, it just means I have depression and OCD together today. That's what it means. And I'm going to move on and I'm not going to solve it. And I'm going to sit with the possibility. Sure, anything could happen. All right. Next one. You are such an encourager. Oh, thank you. Um, I have a loved one who fits so much of what you're sharing. They've not been diagnosed, and I'm really feeling helpless right now. What can I do since they now live with me? Suicidal ideations have been expressed, homicidal thoughts expressed toward family members at different times. The family is very resentful and distancing themselves. It's very hard when we have loved ones who we are like, this smells a lot like something that you could get treated, and it's really affecting the family or your relationships. Um, and it's also impossible to drag people to treatment that don't want it. Um, you know, all but one person who grew up in my house has OCD. And I'm the only person who's been treated for OCD. And people are like, what? And more recently, somebody else decided that they would start getting treated for OCD. People assume, well, if you're going to live with an ERP therapist who has OCD, who treats it every day for 20 plus years, surely all of her family who have OCD would be treated. The answer is no. I can't force people either. All I can do is give them information. So I'm a big fan of giving information. You can share blogs. You can share things like the recording of this workshop and other workshops that NOCD's done. We put these recordings on our YouTube channel. We have a lot of blogs and information about OCD. And all of those different things. Families get resentful because they don't understand it. They're afraid of it. Sometimes it helps to educate family members. Hey, you know what? This person has homicidal thoughts toward you, but it's not personal. Let me teach you more about that. Here's an article you could read. Let's talk about it. Um, but yeah, it's a hard thing to live with. Absolutely. But that's really the best that you can do is say, hey, I know you're miserable. I wonder if you're just willing, you and I could sit down and watch this together, or we could read this article, or will you just sit still while I read this article to you? Um, but yeah, it does get hard. It does get hard. Um, could I please give examples of memorable exposures from my ERP treatment? I feel as if sometimes people do exposures to just do exposures. Well, this is what I would like to say is we navigate exposures to what your particular fears are and how they're coming up for you with OCD. So everyone's are different. So you might do my exact exposures and it doesn't help you because your OCD shows up differently than mine. Um, if somebody's doing exposures just to do them, I would get a different therapist maybe, or say, hey, listen, this isn't really working out for me. The purpose of exposure is to teach our brain to stop trying to avoid that fear and again, what is exposure? It could be imagining something, it could be talking about something, it could be writing a little script about it, it could be facing it. um it really depends on what it is. So I mean, sure, I have a lot of memorable exposures. I'll just share with you a current exposure that I'm doing almost constantly. I'm a fan of, now I don't plan exposures. Like I'm been well for a long time. Every time I go into the bathroom, I get triggered by poopy germs. Um, and I just go through the bathroom feeling a little bit uncomfortable and I don't do anything. Every once in a while, I'll say, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do I'm gonna do something because maybe my OCD has been a little louder for a couple of days around it. So, okay, like for my contamination yesterday, I was looking in the toilet at my house and I was like, ah, looks like it needs to be cleaned. That typically makes me gag and gross out, and I'll usually ask somebody else to clean the toilet. And I was like, no, I mean, it's true. Somebody else will clean it if I ask, but it's going to be more of an exposure for me to do it. And so I just did it. And it was yucky. And I was like, you need to do that once in a while so that, you know, you can stay on top of, I don't know, what if everyone in my family dies and nobody else can clean the toilet? I need to be able to do it. A more taboo exposure that I have, I've been going on for, I don't even know, maybe even a year, because it's suicidal and homicidal, um, that comes up a lot. I get an intrusive everything that, like, I'm going to stab my daughter when she's sleeping, um, probably because it's easier when she's sleeping. And I also get an intrusive sort of thought, feeling, urges and images that when I'm doing things live on Zoom, like this, by the way, so this has been running in the back of my head, or when I run a support group, or when I'm doing a therapy session, I often think you're going to kill yourself while doing this live or while on screen, and you're going to traumatize a bunch of people. And they're all going to say, oh my gosh, OCD is the worst, and it makes you do what you thought. Um and so, because for me it's about stabbing my daughter, it's about the way that I'm having the intrusion, about ending my life on Zoom, always has to do with that I'm going to jab a knife through one side of my throat and it's going to come out the other. It's a very bloody scene in my head. So for at least probably close to a year, I have kept this very large knife next to me. This is not something that you would do in the beginning of ERP treatment. This is not what I did in the beginning of ERP treatment. I imagined, what if I was to touch a knife? What if my daughter was asleep and I had a knife? I'm just going to imagine that. What if I started to write stuff out about it? Oh, I lost control in the middle of the night and I stabbed my daughter. Okay, that's another form of exposure. I'm past all of that. I keep it quiet by keeping something handy next to my office desk at all times. So if she's asleep, I'm like, oh, good, because she's just one room away. Ha 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 ha. I also used this to measure because clearly it fits. One side will come out the other. And I'm like, yay. But that's what OCD well controlled looks like later on. And that's an exposure. It's just an exposure to have it sitting there all the time. Really doesn't bother me at all anymore. Um, okay. How do we differentiate and know that our thoughts are not our own and OCD thoughts? Well, I'm going to start with just that part. We don't. We don't need to figure that out. And trying to figure it out is compulsive and will make you more and more confused as to what is and what's not. Finishing your question, having a really hard time feeling like I can walk in my Christian journey while having horrible thoughts. They make you feel evil, make you feel like you're not able to be on the same page as God. You can't give yourself permission to accept that these are OCD and not your own. Um, and can we talk about how thoughts are worded? Can you have harm thoughts saying, quote, I want to insert harm thought, not just what if? All right, so let me break that down. People with OCD are also sometimes people who ascribe to certain religions. It doesn't make it more or less serious for you to walk a Christian journey while having OCD than it does for somebody who's Buddhist or somebody who's atheist or somebody who is Catholic or etc. Fill in the blanks, all of the options, Jewish. Um, it's the same. And I would encourage you to give yourself the same grace you might give somebody else. So if I tell you that I'm part of a religion and I say I get these intrusive thoughts and images and urges, um, I bet that you would say to me, that's awful, and I'm sorry that you're going through that, and I hope that, it can get better for you. And that's what we don't do for ourselves. We tend to be very hard on ourselves, and we hold ourselves to like a different standard. Yeah, that's everybody else is fine, but I'm a bad person, and that's just not true. We don't make these thoughts, and we don't have to solve them. The fact that they bother you, that they go against your Christian values, already says enough. And now you don't have to figure it out anymore. You can just accept that you have OCD and these things are going to be happening, sometimes even in church, sometimes about people in church. So common to have taboo around religion. I've had people come in and say, listen, I'm having intrusive thoughts about Jesus. I'm having intrusive sexual or harm images about religious figures. And I'm like, yeah, sounds just like anything else. It's not a big deal and has nothing to do with your religion or your religious beliefs. It falls on the side of your OCD. And you trying to figure it out, OCD won't let you. It will never let you. So trying to do it is going to make you worse and worse. In terms of how do harm thoughts sound, they sound all the ways. People freak out because they're like, what if it's not just a what if? Mine are always like, you're definitely going to dot, dot, dot. You better watch out because you can't stop yourself from, you should do that. So people are like, what if it's a command? It's fine. It's not a problem. The last couple of days, my suicidal OCD has been extra loud just because there's been a lot of stressors going on, and that's very normal to get a flare up in symptoms. I've had the intrusive thoughts, images, urges, and a feeling, a real life feeling like I'm actually physically going to get up and run into the street when I see a like truck coming and then I'm going to die. It just feels that way. And that's okay. And it's not saying, but what if you? It's saying, you can't stop yourself. This is happening. You want to do it. You're going to do it. You can't stop yourself from not doing it. Oh my gosh. Like, and I'm like, yep, right? Because it's possible. Is it hard to run in front of a truck? No, it's super easy. Am I going to do it? I'm not going to do it. Is it possible? Sure, it's entirely possible. I could do it right now. I could just jump out my window and run into the street. It's not hard. It's possible, but I'm not doing it right now. So, yep, OCD can sound like anything. Your voice, someone else's voice, you're not sure. All right. I heard about ACT, which is acceptance commitment therapy. It seems that ERP is still the main treatment. Is ACT fundamentally different than ERP or complementing? I feel I've reached a plateau with ERP. Did you ever feel yourself that you've done ERP, but you plateaued? So, great questions. So ACT is fundamentally and 100% different than ERP. ERP is very specifically two things. It's exposure and it's ritual prevention or stopping compulsions. ACT is about learning flexibility, identifying your values, not engaging with things or labeling them as bad or good. Some of that overlaps a little bit with ERP. So when you say reached a plateau, I don't, it could mean any number of things. So, like for instance, I haven't been in ERP therapy for years and years because I finished and I'm done and I just don't need it anymore because I have the tools and I just plug them in every day. Now, if you feel like you're stuck and you're like, I don't know, I'm just like not pushing myself to do the things, sometimes it can be helpful to add in ACT, and I honestly just put a lot of those principles into the ERP when I'm working with people in terms of identifying your values that make you want to be motivated to keep reducing and eliminating compulsions, for instance. So that can be very helpful. I think sometimes people are like, okay, that's it now. I'm going to run out and do ERP and ACT, and that's going to solve it. It's still not going to solve it necessarily. What solves it is you committing yourself to doing the hard things outside of your therapy sessions. People often think they can go to a therapy session and going to that session is going to solve their OCD for them, and it's not. ERP or therapy sessions are there to teach you tools to use when you're not in therapy. So I hear people sometimes, they're like, ERP didn't work for me. And I was like, no, of course not. ERP doesn't work for anybody. No therapy works for anybody. You learn the tools and then you work it yourself at home in between sessions, and your therapist is there to help build your toolkit. But you can walk around with a closed toolbox that you don't use, right? So, but I do find it valuable to identify values. Like, for instance, like, why am I going to go on a plane when every time I get on a plane, I think I'm going to grab somebody's crotch, I'm going to freak out, I'm going to open the exit door in the middle of the air and die, and everyone else dies. This happens every time. It's like, whatever. But my value is I love to travel. I love to go see people and new places. So I allow my value to get in front of those fears, and I do it anyway. Right. Um, so yeah, that's I guess what I would say. I did ERP in sessions, and then I started doing it more and more at home. And like I said, now I just build it into my lifestyle, which is what I help people do. But really thinking about, why do you want to do it? Have you given up something because of OCD? Or relationships affected? Are you giving up things you love? Those are the things that sometimes it can be helpful to identify, to help you motivate toward that. Like, I want to hug my daughter, and therefore I'm going to hug her even though I get intrusive thoughts when I do it. Because hugging is important to me. Showing her I love her is important to me, even if it comes with some intrusions that I don't appreciate. So in those ways, that's where some ACT principles, or even just sort of talking about values, can be helpful. Well, hello, Zach. Um, what shifts something to being taboo? Is it always changing based on society? Yeah, great one. Um, Taboo is identified differently by everyone. I'll give you an example. There are people in Europe. I went to Europe, and there was like a lot of nude advertisements. Well, in America, you're not going to see like straight up nude advertising, right? So I was like, whoa, that's nuts. What are all these naked people? And I saw some like naked people outside sunning. And I was like, whoa, what's happening here? So in their society, that wasn't a big deal. If they would, I don't know, go to California, or I don't know, go to wherever in the US, they might be like, why are you walking around naked? What is happening? Why is there naked stuff on a sign? That's very taboo. So yeah, it's very much driven by society, but it can also be personal. For instance, if you're very religious and OCD is attacking your religion, it becomes taboo. If you're not religious and OCD saying things about religious things, it might not be taboo to you because you're like, I don't really care about that. Um, so I think there's some general themes that are probably taboo in most places, but not always. I was shook by some of these tribes way out in the middle of nowhere that I learned about when becoming a sex therapist, where all the rest of the societies would have said that's pedophilia. But in their culture, certain things they were doing were not pedophilia. They were actually built into their culture. So yeah, definitely who's doing what and how that's being judged. Um, so, yeah, I have had 20 years when my OCD felt manageable. For the last, it's come back in a big way, and I don't understand why. Yep, that happens sometimes. It can happen to anybody for any reason, anytime, anywhere. Um, it can be stressors, it can be hormones, it can be life changes, new job. You get engaged, you get married, you get pregnant, you have a baby, so many different things that can be going on, that can make it act up. Like, for instance, mine's usually pretty chill. It hasn't been chill in a couple months because I have a lot of family stressors that are happening right now that are just, so it's louder. Um, so really understanding why could be helpful, but understanding what to do is more helpful. So it's louder now than usual. So I'm going to do all the same ERP things I normally do, but just more of them. I'm going to be more aware of my potential to compulse because things are louder. And so being on top of that is your number one thing right then and there. Any tips on opening up to my girlfriend about these thoughts and themes? How much is too much? Is that question a compulsion itself? It's just a question. So that's a great question. Um, I talk about this sometimes with people. Everybody's decision to share and how much is very personal and can get compulsive. We have a confession compulsion. If I don't tell you all my thoughts and what they're about, I'm not being honest, and you don't know if you should love me or not. You don't know if you should be my friend or my girlfriend. I can tell you this. I've been with the same person for 23 years, who actually also has OCD. And I didn't tell him any of my taboo intrusive thoughts. They're not important. They're not who I am or about me. They're just how my OCD is flavored. I did talk about my contamination because it was pretty obvious that I did a bunch of weird sort of behaviors that anybody could have sniffed out as problematic, and I wanted to explain why they were happening. So, like, I used to not touch money. So if we went out and somebody was, and you pay with like a $20 bill, which I would do because bills were fine, it was the loose change that I wouldn't touch. And the loose change is coming back. I used to be like, keep it. I ended up explaining what was going on and be like, if you want it, you can grab it. Like, I think it's gross, because it's not important. Now, 20 years later, he's heard some of my like podcasts I've been on, or he'll go to my like Taboo Tracie Instagram page, or something like that, and see something that I post about myself or hear me talking about something and be like, "Oh, I didn't know that you were thinking about blowing our baby's head up." And I'm like, "Oh, good. Yeah, it wasn't important." So, oh yeah, I wasn't talking about how I was thinking about smothering you with a pillow in your sleep. It's not relevant. You know who I am as a person. We're together. Don't worry about my OCD content. So it's not necessary to share. I usually just am like, when I talk to people, I'm like, I have OCD. If I want to share my themes, it's usually because it's for educational purposes for people. I was at a restaurant the other day, actually, with Dr. McGrath, and somebody was talking about, Dr. McGrath was like, "Hey, like, yeah, we treat OCD." I don't remember how it came up, but and the server was like, "Oh yeah, like constantly tapping and stuff." And then I was like, I'm going to share about taboo themes right now so this person can be educated. So I shared with them, yeah, and you know what? It can come out. Yes, it could be tapping. And let me tell you some other ways it can come up and how it comes up for me. And he was like, whoa. And he heard about it. And he goes, oh, wow. So jerks like me going around saying, and I was like, no, you're not a jerk. I just wanted you to know other ways that it actually comes out so that you were like, oh, and he goes, yeah, I didn't know it came out in those other ways. To me, sharing with him was educational. Sharing with my husband is irrelevant. I'm like, why? You don't need to know that I'm thinking about smothering you with a pillow. It's irrelevant. So, yeah. All right. Looks like we have a few more minutes. If someone has distressing, intrusive thoughts, then they feel the thought contaminates their clothes themselves. They believe wearing the clothes will recontaminate, intensify thoughts, or they need to shower. Should they work on exposures toward clothing, showering compulsions, or the root thoughts, or both? Great question. I would work on response prevention, which is not changing your clothes, not washing your clothes, keeping those clothes on. It's just sort of a thought of transfer contamination. So if I told you right now, for instance, this thing I'm wearing right here, what if I'm like, I'm going to say words into it. Murder, you're a murderer, you're going to murder a bunch of people. This is a murder dress. This is also a suicide dress. This is a pedophilic dress. You're going to touch children. You're going to harm yourself and harm others into, because you're wearing this dress, all the bad things, words. That's just, I've had those images throughout. All right, I said it even. It's still just clothes. So the best thing that you would want to do is not change your clothes. and move forward. And because before you used to do those decontamination rituals, you used to not do them. And when you used to not do them, you were fine. I assure you, I know for a fact you haven't been doing this since birth. So whenever you started doing this as a compulsion to try to solve or escape or not make things worse, but you're really not doing anything helpful or useful. You're just making your OCD louder. So the response prevention, which would be leaving those clothes on anyway. We get that with contamination in other ways too. People will be like, oh, whatever, like I walked by a group of people smoking weed and I'm sober and now my clothes are contaminated and I'm going to become infested with weed contamination. I'm going to be like, wear your clothes, wear them for 2 days in a row, as a matter of fact, and let's see what happens. Because we have facts already. I'm not going to talk about the facts, but I'm going to have you wear your clothes. That's an exposure, but it's also ritual prevention in that I don't want you to shower. I don't want you to wash those. I want you to keep them on and see if that happens. Maybe it's possible. Right? Like maybe you'll see a news story later where I do 3 to 5 bad things while wearing this, which would be kind of cool because this is a pretty cute outfit. All right. I'm new to all this. I think I have POCD. When you said stop checking and looking things up, what do you mean? Can I elaborate? Yes. Trying to solve, am I a pedophile or is this OCD? That is the question that you are likely trying to solve. So, looking things up online, like how do you know if you're a pedophile? How do you know if you have pedophilic OCD instead of instead of being a pedophile? Looking at things online to check how you feel about it. Wait, when I saw that, how did I feel? Do I remember? Wait, did I smile when somebody walked by? Did I look that kid in the eyes? How do I feel? When I changed my kid's diaper, did this mean something? Did I do something? So all of those different things is what I'm talking about. Don't check, don't look things up, stop taking tests online, don't look at things online and then ask yourself I'm going to look at this online and see if I'm attracted to it. That's just a checking compulsion. So that's really what I'm talking about. Here's one. Can what they call limerence actually be OCD? I get asked about limerence all the time. I'm like, bring on the hate, but limerence is not an actual factual thing. You can find things that say it's a actual thing. People can experience things that sound like limerence. People with OCD freak out about limerence a lot, though, and so I want to say that some of the most common things that people with OCD freak out about that I hear constantly, and I'm like, you on Reddit? Are you on TikTok? Where did you read this? This is where you started freaking out. You read things that weren't right. Limerence, DPDR or depersonalization and derealization. Angel numbers. These are just a few magical things that I wanted to bring up that make people really freak out. Now, DPDR can be a real thing, but it's not dangerous, like not a big deal. And people with OCD are like, oh my God, I'm depersonalizing. What if I flip out? I'm derealizing. I'm like, calm down. Like, this is so OCD. It's ridiculous. And people who have the actual disorder of DPDR, for instance, this is not dangerous. They don't freak out and murder people. It's really just not a huge deal. So I would say leave limerence out of the picture and get assessed for OCD. What are your thoughts on real event OCD? I feel like it's not talked about often, wondering if this subtype is as valid as any other subtype. Yes, real event OCD is something really happened. Now I can't stop thinking about it, but also where the OCD is coming in is this what happened? What if I don't remember, but this happened? What if, so I went camping. I've treated people like that. I went camping, I was drinking, what if I forgot, but I murdered somebody on my way to the bathroom and buried their body? And I'm like, whoa, that was the deep jump. Um, so real event OCD tends to be there was something that happened in real life, and now we're going back and back and we're trying to review it. We're trying to assess it. We're trying to remember parts about it. And that tends to be where false memory OCD then starts to activate and become a thing. So my thoughts on real event OCD, I'll tell you exactly how I treat it. Whatever it was is over. Leave it where it belongs, which is in the past, and deal with today in this moment. One of my favorite sentences, I make most of my clients write this down and stick it somewhere where they can see it all the time. And it goes like this. It's two parts. Is this happening right now in this moment? That's one. Part two is, if not, move on and do something you value instead. Because we can't solve for the past or the future unless you have a time machine, which I don't have. It could be, I feel bad about something that happened before. It could be, did that person give consent? I don't remember if they gave consent. Maybe they didn't give consent. I'm going to call and ask if they gave consent. I'm going to call 14 times. I'm going to try and remember if that happened. You know, whatever it is, it's over, leave it in the past. And yes, it's very valid. I post about that on Taboo Tracie on Instagram, along with all other things taboo, actually. All right, I think we have time for this. Well, I'm going to read one and then I'm going to read. Okay, my son is dealing with severe anxiety. We think OCD. He's expressed the images pop up daily of my wife and I dying. He has overwhelming feelings. He's bad or wrong. We're working with an occupational therapist. He's starting CBT this week. We remind him when it comes up to look at facts, go through things, show him that facts, that he's not bad or wrong. What is another helpful strategy? I'm going to tell you right now, CBT is not the right treatment for OCD and it makes it worse. Because, and I know this, I've been through it myself, and I've also originally was trained to do CBT and saw all my patients get worse before I learned ERP and started doing it. OCD is not a fact disorder. If it were a fact disorder, we would feed it the correct facts, tell it how wrong it was, and we would never have the intrusion again. And that's just not how it works. It's a doubting disorder with endless intrusive doubt. And actually, the more facts you try to feed it, it just falls into a black hole. I highly recommend going to exposure response prevention treatment if you want this to get better. And part of what we teach families to do is actually to not give reassurance. And you learn more about that in the ERP process, because the more you're like, don't worry, see, you've never killed anyone. No, no, see, we're not dead. See, we're not going to die. Here's my latest health score from my doctor. It shows I'm really super healthy. First of all, that's not solving it. As you've seen, this person's not feeling better when they see those facts. But also, how do we know that you're not going to die? Maybe two people are in a car accident tomorrow. So there is some reality to everybody's going to die eventually. Also, we don't know when or how. So there's no amount of facts you could give that are 100% factual. Don't worry, we're going to live to be 100. You don't know that for sure. I have friends who've passed away in their 20s who thought they were going to live to be old. My grandmother lived to be 92. You know, so these aren't really giving people facts. It's just giving people false hope that don't worry, it's not possible. So my biggest recommendation is don't make it worse. Don't take that person to CBT, because it will make it worse, because this person's just going to fact check constantly. And it's just going to get worse and worse until they get evidence-based therapy that's helpful for OCD, which is not that. So I'm glad you asked that, and I hope we can avoid that issue. I'm going to do one more. Actually, I'll do two more really quickly. When I get urges to do things like driving into a concrete barrier, for example, I worry because in the past I've spontaneously done things like driving into floodwaters or jumping off cliffs. Does the ERP still encourage maybe you will, maybe you won't when you have in the past? So again, I mean, there's always a possibility. Could you drive into a concrete barrier? Sure. Will you? That's your choice. Nobody controls your physical body. You control your physical body. So I get that exact same thing all the time. You're going to drive off the road, drive off a bridge, drive into a barrier, drive into oncoming traffic. I choose not to do it. Have I done spontaneous things? Sure. But I chose to do those things, and that's the difference. OCD doesn't control your body. You control your body. Last one. So, oh, and the one after is very short. So, when I get feelings in my genitals and even wetness, it's not because I actually like what I'm thinking or saying. Yes, that is correct. When you are getting things that are intrusive and that happens, that is just part of OCD. It's a groanal response. It's not a big deal. But even me telling you that isn't going to solve this for you because you'll go, yeah, but you forgot to tell her this. But yeah, it's a normal part of OCD. Last one. Is doing distractions good from doing compulsions like reading, exercising? Good idea. So these are some people are like, I don't want to do distractions. That's really response prevention. That's what we want you to do. So instead of compulsing, you're going to read. Instead of compulsing, you're going to exercise. Awesome sauce. Glad you're going to do that. Yes, that's exactly what we want to do. We want to take our focus outside of our head and our bodies and move it outward where we are actually in the world right here. So even though I have tons of intrusions going on in my head, I'm ending this live in a moment. And the fact is, I'm not driving a knife through my neck. I'm not doing something else. I'm just wrapping up this live here, this workshop. If you are interested in getting treatment or even getting a free consultation with us, with our care team to find out about your coverage, your insurance, what it looks like to get OCD treatment with us, you can go to NOCD.com. You can visit us on all of our socials. I look forward to seeing y'all and best to everyone.